conference time. So we have been studying this semester our breath work on our mat and our breath in our life, trying to increase our Ujjayi breathing while we're doing our Ashtanga practice and trying to increase our breathing out there, driving and walking and working and talking and all the stuff that we do. We've mainly focused on our inhalations and inhaling more. This week we're moving into, you might think we're going to talk about exhalation, but I've jumped to breath retention. Do you guys know what we call breath retention in Sanskrit? It's something we do in our yoga practice. We have a separate practice for this. What's the Sanskrit name for breath retention? Anybody? Kumbhaka. Yes. What does it mean? Do you guys remember? It means like a vessel or a container, right? A pot. The literal translation is pot. So there are probably not a lot of places in life where we hold our breath. Usually, if we're doing life, it's probably not a good idea to just randomly not be breathing, right? But when you do it as a practice with intention after doing deep inhales and exhales, it becomes incredibly powerful for our physical health and our mental health. So I wanted to read to you guys a little bit from a yoga text about the benefits of breathing. So the full yoga breath is at the core of any yoga practice. When you learn to breathe from your deep belly instead of your chest, you increase your lung capacity, you increase your circulation, you send more oxygen to the brain, and you reduce stress and tension quickly and efficiently. So one of the suggestions in the yoga world is to have a separate breath practice from your yoga breath practice, because in that practice we can actually do retention. So in Ashtanga or in most of the other yogas, we call that pranayama, right? Prana means what? Energy. And what's ayama? Yes, to stretch it. So we're learning to stretch the breath and increase the breath in a separate pranayama practice. So just reading on a little more, the full yoga breath with retention is a slightly more advanced pranayama. Retaining the breath increases the strength of the lungs and brings more oxygen to the bloodstream, allowing for deeper breathing. In addition, this breath brings further awareness to 3 chambers of the breath. So this is the lower abdominal region, the rib cage, which is important, and then of course the upper lungs. The benefits: reduces tension, increases lung capacity and circulation, improves mental performance, and encourages more focus for us. So we've been studying and talking a lot about Wim Hof lately, and I'm kind of switching gears, and I'm going to introduce another person to you guys named Stig Severinsen. I referred to him a couple weeks ago. Stig Severinsen is a freediver. He's 4-time world champion freediver, and also holds the world's record for breath retention. Do you guys know just how long he held his breath? So it was in Denmark, 2010. He was in a tank floating with sharks, right? Just to add a little something, there were sharks in the tank. And he held his breath for 20 minutes and 10 seconds and holds the world record for that. He's a very interesting gentleman because he's a biologist, but he also holds his PhD in medicine. So he brings a lot of wisdom like Wim and research and knowledge to this idea of breathing and all the benefits that come with having a breath practice. He did a TED Talk, which I would like all of you to watch this week if you have time. And the TED Talk is on our website, so you can find it there. It's a 20-minute TED Talk. It's kind of interesting because he starts off the TED Talk with when he was submerged in the water with the sharks for the world's record. And then he does the TED Talk through the entire duration of his time floating in the water. And then it ends with him coming out of the water and breaking the world record. And everybody cheering. And what was fascinating to me is if you can imagine what it took physically for him to hold his breath for 20 minutes, and he comes out of this just like we might come out of like a headstand and go, hey, everyone's like, how do you feel? He's like, I feel great. So it's very inspiring, this particular TED Talk. I hope you guys make time for it. He starts off the TED Talk saying that one of the things that breath retention does for us is it actually increases the strength of your lungs, and also in doing that, our longevity. And one thing I didn't realize that he had talked about in there is that as we age, our lungs actually shrink. Well, why do they shrink? It's part of degeneration, right? Obviously. But we're sitting like this all the time, and we're driving like this, and we're texting like this, and we're on our computers like this, and we're talking on our phones like this, and it's collapsed position for our body. And as Stig was saying, our bodies were not intended to be sitting like this for 14 hours. If we go back years ago, we were meant to be running and chasing our food, and we're active in our physical bodies. And so this years and years of us doing this and collapsing is part of what is actually shrinking the lungs. So our yoga practice, by the way, Stig is an avid yogi, and we see that in the TED Talk a lot. He makes a lot of references to his yoga practice, is about really opening up and breathing. So at the very beginning of this talk, he says we do breath and we add movement. And I was super excited when I heard that, because I was like, Ashtanga, breath and movement. So he has everyone stand up in the talk. I'll have you guys remain seated. And add this kind of to your daily life. So this was the homework for this week, is actually, I'm passing it on from Stig as our homework for this week. Very simple breath and movement, and preferably do this probably not when you're driving your car, but when you are at home, sitting on your couches, at work, sitting in your chairs, working on your computers. He says to get up and take a big inhale like this, and exhale. It almost has a little Tai Chi quality to it. The inhale, we extend and open the lungs and the chest, and the exhale, we push forward and get extension through the arms. So let's all do that together for 5 breaths. Just I want you guys to notice how the physical body feels and how your mental self feels when we do this. So take a big inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Deep inhale, exhale. Deep inhale, exhale. Deep inhale, and exhale. Let's just do it one more time. Deep inhale, and exhale. Good. Just how did you feel? Just 5 simple breaths. More energy. Definitely. More energy, a little bit more awake and alert maybe. So he says 2 of the benefits from this are that we become more energetic and more powerful. So when our lungs are shrinking over the years, we sort of lose our energy and we lose our power. And he makes a good point. He said, actually, we can train our lungs. Freedivers train their lungs, but you and I, we can train our lungs as well to get the same benefits. He talks about making the muscles around the ribs more flexible, which is, again, something we're doing in our yoga practice all the time. Some things to keep in mind is that the inhale is meant to be active. It's actually where we take energy and we pull down the diaphragm into the upper intercostal muscles between the ribs. And then the exhale, of course, is what? It's passive, right? So in the exhale, it's the key to relaxation, basically. So I've of course been doing lots of research to share with you guys about the breath retention, but I don't have as much time as I have on Sunday. So just let me say 2 main things I want you to consider. One is that there's a lot of physiological benefits to training our breath and actually holding our breath after deep breathing. And one of them is that we produce more red blood cells. And the other one, which was interesting to me, is that it's really amazing for our brains, for a lot of different reasons. But one of the things I looked up said that when we are holding the breath, you can change your brain activity. We actually change the frequency of the electrical impulses. When we do that, one of the things that happens is we go into the state of what we might refer to as flow, or where we become one with the thing that it is that we're doing. So we can kind of think of this as meditation as well. But in the TED Talk as well, he shows a picture on the screen of two brains. I believe it's a PET scan or some type of MRI imaging, and one of the brains is a Freedivers brain that trains their retention all the time, and the other brain is what we'll call the normal brain. And what do you think that they found that was different from the Freedivers brain? May, do you remember?
Relax.
The what?
More vessels open.
Yes. The Freedivers brain actually had more plasticity. That was one of the things that they were saying, and again, there's a lot of benefits as we learn more and more about moving that we can actually change our brains. You know, that we can change our brains, that was, we know through our yoga practice, to be more focused, to be more clear, to be more on point, to be one with the thing that we're doing. But also the plasticity means that we can move more into that place of relaxation or Zen as challenges come up, you know, and things that happen. Like, I do believe him putting sharks in the tank with him was also to prove this point. There was also children in the audience, and he wanted to show them that sharks were not monsters, being a biologist. But also that when we're put under these situations that are stressful, we're more able to move into that place of Zen or calmness, that we have more control over that. So what I would like to ask you guys to do is to consider for 30 days to take on a pranayama practice. And your minimum pranayama practice only has to be, get this, 3.5 minutes. That's it. To do Ujjayi breathing for 3.5 minutes and do a breath retention. Or do the Wim Hof breath we've been practicing with deeper inhales and shorter exhales. That usually helps us do a little longer retention. And just start to look at your clocks or your watches and just consider it a training as well. Like, maybe you start with 15 seconds retentions, maybe you make it to 30 seconds. I know some of you doing the Wim Hof with me are doing a minute, 2 minute. You know, we even have some folks doing the 3-minute breath retentions with that. So I can tell you all the benefits, we can read all the benefits of having a pranayama practice, but you be your own experiment and test it out and see whether it makes a difference for you. 30 days. I'm going to finish with our quote for this week by, of course, Stig Severinsen. He said, "The more you believe in the power of thought and the more you listen to your breath, the greater changes you can create in your life." Namaste.